I lost everything because of a lie. One day I was a 22-year-old college graduate with the world at my feet. The next I was facing a nightmare no one should ever experience. My 16-year-old sister Natalie accused me of something unthinkable, something that never happened. I was given an impossible choice: risk 20 years in prison or accept 5 years probation, with a permanent stain on my record. I chose the latter, and it cost me a decade of my life. Until her husband discovered the truth. Before I share how my life was destroyed and eventually redeemed, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you want to see more stories about justice delayed but not denied. Looking back now, I can hardly recognize the person I was before it all happened. Fresh out of college with my computer science degree, I was 22 years old and full of optimism. Job applications, sent interviews, lined up the future bright with promise. Moving back home was supposed to be temporary, just a few months to save money before launching into my adult life. Our family had always been close-knit. Mom worked as an elementary school teacher. Dad managed a hardware store, and my sister Natalie was a sophomore in high school. 16, smart, and increasingly rebellious, but that seemed normal for her age. I had always been protective of her the way older brothers typically are. We shared inside jokes. I helped with her math homework, and despite the 6-year age gap, we generally got along well. The first warning sign came 3 weeks after I moved back home. I woke up around 2 in the morning to use the bathroom and noticed Natalie slipping out the back door. Concerned, I followed her at a distance and saw her climb into a car parked 2 blocks away. The driver was clearly an adult man, much older than her. I confronted her when she snuck back in around 4 a.m., and the argument that followed was intense. Who was that guy? Nat. He looked 25 at least. His name is Tyler, and he is 24. Not that it is your business, she shot back, eyes narrowed with teenage defiance. You are 16. Do Mom and Dad know you are seeing someone that old? Because I am pretty sure that is illegal. Her face changed then from defiance to something harder. If you tell them, I will make you regret it. You do not understand anything about us. I dismissed her threat as typical teenage dramatics and told our parents the next morning. The household became a pressure cooker after that. Dad forbade Natalie from seeing Tyler. Mom tried to reason with her about age-appropriate relationships, and Natalie retreated into sullen hostility, especially toward me. For 2 weeks, tensions simmered. Natalie barely spoke to any of us, spending most time in her room when not at school. I tried to mend things, offering to drive her to the mall or grab ice cream like we used to, but she rejected every olive branch. In hindsight, I should have recognized her silence, not as typical teenage sulking, but as something more calculated. The day that changed everything started normally. I had a job interview scheduled for that afternoon, a promising position at a software company downtown. I remember adjusting my tie in the hallway mirror when the doorbell rang. Mom answered it. Her confused voice called out, "Cornelius, there are police officers here asking for you." 2 uniformed officers stood in our living room. Before I could ask what they wanted, one said, "Cornelius Williams, we need you to come with us for questioning." The second officer pulled out handcuffs. "Turn around, please, sir." Handcuffs. What is going on? What am I being accused of? They declined to answer, reciting Miranda rights as my mother watched in stunned silence. The neighbors gathered on their porches as I was led to a police cruiser. The humiliation of that walk, head down, hands cuffed behind my back, still burns in my memory. At the station, I waited in an interrogation room for nearly 3 hours before 2 detectives entered. They asked routine questions, first establishing my identity and background. Then came the bomb that would detonate my entire life. "Your sister Natalie has made some very serious allegations against you," said the older detective, his face professionally neutral. "What allegations? This must be some mistake." "She states that 2 weeks ago, after driving her home from a party, you inappropriately touched her in the car before entering the house. She has provided detailed testimony." The blood drained from my face. The party they referenced had happened, but nothing inappropriate occurred. I had simply picked her up because she called, saying her ride fell through. We drove home in near silence, still at odds over the Tyler situation. That is absolutely false. I would never, ever do something like that. She is making this up because I told our parents about her adult boyfriend. The detectives exchanged a glance I would later recognize as skepticism toward my claim of innocence. They continued questioning for hours, the same accusations repeated from different angles, trying to trip me into an admission. I maintained my innocence, growing increasingly desperate as I realized the gravity of my situation. My father arrived with a court-appointed attorney, his face ashen. The public defender, a harried woman named Miss Peters with a caseload clearly too heavy for one person, spoke to me privately. The prosecution has a 16-year-old girl with a consistent story, tearful testimony, and no apparent motive to lie that the average jury will accept. You have no evidence beyond your word that nothing happened. But nothing did happen. This is insane. Cannot we get a lie detector test or something? She shook her head wearily. Polygraphs are not admissible in court. Here is the reality you need to understand. Cases like these have over 70% conviction rates, even with minimal evidence. The prosecutor is offering a deal: 5 years probation. As a registered offender, no jail time. If you go to trial and lose, mandatory minimum is 20 years. But I am innocent. I cannot plead guilty to something I did not do. You have 48 hours to decide, she said. Think carefully. 20 years is a long time to maintain your innocence. I spent that night in a holding cell, alternating between rage, disbelief, and crushing fear. How could Natalie do this? What would happen to my life either way? By morning, cold reality had set in. I was 22, with no real resources to fight a lengthy legal battle. The system was not designed to favor the accused in cases like mine. My father, tearful during our brief meeting, laid it out starkly. Cornelius, I believe you. But your mother is not sure, and a jury might not be either. If you lose in court, your entire 20s and 30s will be spent in prison. At least, with probation, you will have some kind of life. Some kind of life. Those words echoed as I made the most difficult decision of my existence, to plead guilty to a crime I never committed. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Nothing like the grand spaces shown in legal dramas. My suit, once fitted for job interviews, now hung loose after a week of barely eating. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, asked if I understood the terms of my plea agreement. Yes, Your Honor, I answered, my voice hollow. Across the room sat my family. My father stoic but devastated. My mother tearful and uncertain where to place her loyalty. And Natalie giving an Academy Award-worthy performance of the traumatized victim, occasionally dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Only I could see the vindictive satisfaction beneath her performance. Very well, the judge said. The court accepts your plea of guilty. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years probation and must register as a sex offender within 48 hours. Next case. Just like that, in less than 20 minutes, I became branded for life. No gavel dramatically pounded. No speech about justice. Just a bureaucratic procedure that destroyed my future with the efficiency of stamping an envelope. The consequences were immediate and overwhelming. The job offers disappeared overnight. My almost finalized apartment lease was rejected when the background check revealed my new status. Friends stopped returning calls once word spread. The requirements of registration meant my address would be public information viewable by anyone online, forever marking me. My father, the only person who never wavered in his belief in my innocence, offered a lifeline. He had a small one-bedroom apartment in Colorado, nearly 800 miles away from our hometown in Missouri. He would stay with his brother temporarily while I took the apartment, giving me a chance to start over somewhere no one knew me. It is not much, but it is a place to live that meets the restrictions, he said, referring to the requirement that I live at least 1,000 feet from any school, park, or place where children regularly gather. A nearly impossible constraint in most urban neighborhoods. The apartment was in a rundown building in a commercial district, surrounded by warehouses and small businesses. Depressing, but compliant with my restrictions. My probation was transferred to the local office, where I checked in weekly with Officer Brennan, a man who clearly had seen too many cases to maintain any empathy. Computer guy, huh? he said during our first meeting reviewing my file. Well, forget about working for any reputable company. They all do background checks. Maybe try freelance work under the radar. Each week also included mandatory therapy sessions with Dr. Harrison, a court-appointed counselor who specialized in offender rehabilitation. The irony of needing rehabilitation for a crime I never committed was not lost on me, but I played along knowing any resistance would be viewed as failure to accept responsibility. Meanwhile, my life back home continued to fracture along fault lines created by Natalie's accusation. My mother chose to believe her daughter, making strained monthly calls that never acknowledged the elephant in the room. Family holidays became complicated diplomatic negotiations, with me celebrating Thanksgiving in Colorado with Dad, while Mom and Natalie had their own gathering in Missouri. Finding employment proved nearly impossible. Every promising application ended with the background check. I eventually found work as a remote software developer for a small startup that needed coding help desperately enough to skip formal verification. The pay was a fraction of what my classmates were making, but it covered rent and groceries. Social isolation became my new normal. I avoided making friends, knowing the inevitable question about why I moved to Colorado would lead to either lies or uncomfortable truths. Dating was completely off the table. How do you explain to someone that you are on the registry but innocent? No one would believe that story from a stranger. While I struggled to construct some semblance of a life from the wreckage, Natalie graduated high school with honors. She was accepted to the University of Chicago with a partial scholarship. Mom proudly sent photos of the ceremony, oblivious to how each image twisted the knife deeper. My sister had not only destroyed my life, but was thriving in the aftermath of her lie. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. There were dark nights when I questioned whether continuing was worth the effort. The therapy sessions, initially a procedural annoyance, gradually became necessary for my survival. Not for the reason the court intended, but because I needed help processing the trauma of false accusation and its aftermath. Dr. Martinez, a private therapist I started seeing after my court-mandated sessions ended, was the first person besides my father who entertained the possibility of my innocence. Whether or not the event occurred as charged, your experience of being accused and its consequences is very real trauma, she said. We need to work on how you live with this reality, innocent or not. Those sessions helped me develop coping mechanisms for the anger and hopelessness that threatened to consume me. I created an online identity where no one knew my past, finding virtual communities around coding and game development where I could interact without judgment. 5 years passed this way, and my probation finally ended. The supervision requirements lifted, but the registration requirement remained. A permanent digital scarlet letter ensuring I would never fully escape the accusation. I had built a life within my constraints, a remote career that provided financial stability. A small circle of online friends who knew me only as Cornelius the programmer. A modest apartment in a different city where neighbors did not question my background. It was a shadow of the life I had once expected, but it was something. Then came the email that would change everything again. 10 years after the accusation, I received a message from an unfamiliar address, james.bennett@gmail.com. The subject line read simply, "About Natalie Williams." My heart raced as I opened it. Mr. Williams, you don't know me, but I'm James Bennett, Natalie's husband of 2 years. I need to speak with you privately about something important I've discovered. Please contact me at this email or this number if you're willing to meet. My finger hovered over the delete button. What possible good could come from reconnecting with anyone from that part of my life? But curiosity eventually won out, and I replied, asking for more information before committing to a meeting. His response came within an hour. I found something while renovating our attic that you need to see. It concerns the allegations she made against you. I believe you may have been wrongfully accused. After several days of cautious email exchanges, I agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Denver, halfway between my current apartment and where James and Natalie lived in Boulder. I arrived early, claiming a corner table with clear sightlines to all entrances, a habit developed from years of hypervigilance. James was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with an earnest face and nervous energy. He carried a messenger bag and ordered black coffee before sitting across from me. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "This is difficult." He glanced around before continuing, voice lowered. "Natalie and I have been having problems. She's been distant, secretive. I thought maybe she was having an affair, so I started paying more attention to her behaviors. Last month I was replacing insulation in the attic and found a box of her old journals and high school mementos." He withdrew a leather-bound journal from his bag, placing it carefully on the table between us. "I know reading someone's diary is a violation of privacy, but once I started, I could not stop. What I found made me question everything about our marriage." With shaking hands, I opened the journal to the bookmark he had placed. The entry was dated just days before my arrest, written in Natalie's distinctive handwriting that I recognized immediately. "Tyler says, if Cornelius keeps causing problems, we need to make him go away. He gave me the idea today. He says, if I tell people Cornelius touched me inappropriate, no one will question it because everyone always believes the girl. It is perfect because once he is gone, Mom and Dad cannot stop me from seeing Tyler anymore." Several entries followed, detailing her plan with cold calculation, how she would cry while telling her story, which details to include to sound believable, and how Tyler coached her on what to say to the police. A wave of nausea hit me as I continued reading. 10 years of my life destroyed by a teenage revenge plot. My hands trembled so badly I could barely turn the pages. "There is more," James said quietly, pulling out his phone. "I found text messages she kept from that time, screenshots saved in a password-protected folder, between her and Tyler. He showed me the messages their conspiracy laid bare in digital black and white. Tyler instructing her on how to act traumatized. Natalie reporting back after I was arrested. Their celebration when I accepted the plea deal. Why are you showing me this?" I managed to ask through the tightness in my throat. "She is your wife." James looked down at his untouched coffee. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because I cannot stay married to someone capable of this. And because I think you deserve a chance to clear your name." I broke down then right there in the public coffee shop. 10 years of suppressed emotion erupting in deep racking sobs. James sat silently, occasionally placing an awkward but compassionate hand on my shoulder. When I finally regained composure, we discussed options. As a software engineer, James had been careful to document everything, creating digital copies of the journal entries and texts, storing them securely. "I will testify about how I found these if needed," he offered. "I know it might end my marriage, but after discovering this, that seems inevitable anyway." We spent 3 hours in that coffee shop formulating a plan. I would need a lawyer specializing in wrongful convictions. James would secure the evidence and prepare a statement. We exchanged contact information and agreed to proceed carefully, knowing Natalie might destroy evidence if alerted. That evening, I called my father for the first time in months. Through tears, I explained what James had discovered. Dad wept openly on the other end of the line. "I knew it, son. I always knew it. Now we can finally prove it." With renewed purpose, I hired Patricia Alvarez, an attorney renowned for overturning wrongful convictions. She reviewed the evidence James provided and believed we had a strong case to petition the court. "The journal and text messages constitute new evidence not available during your original case," she explained. "Combined with James's testimony, we have grounds to request your record be expunged." The legal process moved slowly each day, an exercise in patience. Patricia filed motions the prosecutor's office pushed back. Hearings were scheduled and rescheduled. Meanwhile, James officially separated from Natalie, moving into an apartment of his own. She still had no idea he had discovered her secret. 6 months after our coffee shop meeting came the deposition that would change everything. James testified under oath about finding the journal and text messages. He provided authenticated copies to the court. Natalie was called to respond, walking into the room with confidence that drained away when she saw her estranged husband sitting with my legal team. Her attempts to discredit the evidence failed spectacularly. The journal's authenticity was verified by a handwriting expert. The text messages were confirmed through subpoenaed phone records. Her carefully constructed lie, maintained for a decade, collapsed like a house of cards. The hearing to expunge my record took place on a bright Tuesday morning, almost exactly 10 years and 3 months after my original sentencing. The same courthouse, but a different judge. Judge Watkins, an older man with a reputation for thorough review of cases, presided. Having examined the new evidence presented, I find clear and convincing proof that Mr. Williams was falsely accused and wrongfully convicted, he stated. The court hereby orders his record expunged and his name removed from all offender registries immediately. The gavel strike that had been absent a decade earlier finally sounded, marking the official end of my nightmare. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by emotions too complex to name. Natalie sat across the courtroom, her face a mask of defiance crumbling into fear. The judge ordered her to make a public apology, which she delivered through clenched teeth, eyes never meeting mine. I acknowledged that my accusations against Cornelius Williams were fabricated, and I apologize for the harm caused, she recited mechanically. My mother approached afterward, tears streaming down her face. I should have believed you, she whispered. Can you ever forgive me? Forgiveness, I was learning, is complicated. I embraced her because she was my mother, and her pain was genuine, but the trust broken would require time to rebuild, if it ever could be. In the months that followed, I pursued civil action against the system that had failed me. The settlement provided financial compensation that could never replace the decade lost, but offered security for rebuilding. More importantly, my case gained attention, highlighting flaws in how sexual assault accusations are handled. I channeled my experience into advocacy, creating a support network for others, navigating false accusations. Through this work, I met Sarah, another advocate whose brother had experienced something similar. She understood my journey in ways others could not, and gradually, cautiously, we developed a relationship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The final chapter with Natalie came unexpectedly a year after my exoneration. She requested to meet at the same park where we had played as children. Separated from Tyler years earlier, and now divorced from James, she seemed smaller, somehow diminished by the consequences of her actions finally catching up. I was 16 and stupid and angry, she said, as if that explained everything. I never thought it would go so far. Tyler convinced me it would just scare you, maybe get you grounded. Then everything spiraled, and I could not take it back without admitting what I had done. Her remorse seemed genuine, but came a decade too late. I did not offer absolution, but instead a truth she needed to hear. I am not meeting you for your forgiveness, Natalie. I am here to tell you that I am moving forward without the weight of what you did. Not for you, but for me. Today, my foundation helps others navigate the complexities of being falsely accused. My record is clear, my career rebuilt, and my capacity for trust slowly healing. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after being wrongfully accused or betrayed by family? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else feeling alone in their struggle. If this account of finding justice after a decade resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of overcoming injustice against impossible odds. Do not forget to share with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes, even when it takes years, truth does find its way to the light. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your darkest chapter does not have to be your final one.